And welcome back, everyone. Many of you probably remember that. Go back to about 1965. We're talking Lost in Space, and at this time we would like to welcome to the show one Jonathan Harris. How are you doing, Jonathan?
Oh, I'm very fine. I'm so envious of your weather. Did I hear that lady say that you were 76 degrees?
It's very, very unusual for St. Louis.
We're over 100.
Oh, my goodness.
It's ghastly. I hate it.
I understand.
My roses are drooping all over the place.
Well, you know what I would say to that?
Is there, Daddy?
I would say, oh, the pain. The pain.
God, yes. Oh, I look at me roses, and all I could think of is, oh, the pain.
Hey, listen, the first question I have to ask, now, are you one of those types of actors that when you're going to essay a part that you go out and study the person or the thing or whatever it is that you're going to play so that you can really get into the role?
Well, I have my own method. I don't know what you would call it. I really examine what I have to do, and I try to get into it very, very seriously. I decide who he is, and what the play is about, and what my relationship is with everybody in the play, and then I decide what I can walk off with. As I did in Lost in Space, you may remember.
Sure. Well,
I do my number, which is comedic villainy, which I...
That's true. That's good. You ought to have that on a business card. That's what it should say. Jonathan Harris.
Comedic villain will travel.
Comedic villain par excellence. Yeah.
Well, you know, originally in Lost in Space, when I was hired, I was a deep-dyed, snarling villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated him because I knew there was no longevity in that.
That's right.
Part. They'd have to kill me off and I'd be unemployed again. I'm very boring. So I began to sneak in my famous little bits, hoping nobody would notice. But of course they did. And the upshot of the story was that I was really given carte blanche to do anything I wanted. First and only time in my vast career. I hope I didn't overstep the bounds. I don't believe I did.
How did the fan mail go?
Oh, the fan mail went crazy and still does, and I must tell you, I enjoy it. I am probably the only actor in the world who answers every bloody letter that I get.
That's good.
It takes a little time.
Well, you are to be congratulated for that.
Well, I believe in doing that. I think it's very important. People take the time to write to me, and I will find the time to answer the mail.
Well, that's neat. You know, the reason I asked if you really get your teeth into a role, I was wondering if you would be studying a praying mantis right now.
Oh, I certainly am. Although, how do you study a praying mantis?
Well, that's what I was wondering.
The animated feature film, which was called, they've just changed the title, it was called Bugs. And now it's called It's a Bug's Life. And I'm the praying mantis. And I'm an aging thespian, referred to in the script as the Magnificent Manny. And I said to John Lasseter, the director, you obviously have been reading my fan mail. Well, there you are, you see. It's a marvelous part.
That's right.
And I'm enjoying it tremendously. They are lovely to work for, the Disneys, I must tell you.
That's great. Now, I understand that in recent years you've been highlighting a lot of voiceover work.
Yes, that's all I'll do now. I've done 612 films for television. I think that's kind of a record in
It must be.
Actually.
It must be.
And I committed about 5 years ago to thank you very much. I've had it. I really have no further interest in it. And I went on to the voice work, which has been just wonderful, and I do enjoy it, I must say. It's creative enough, possibly not as creative as doing a 3-act play, which is where I was brought up on Broadway, but it's creative enough. And I find myself working with the voice wizards of our time. They're fabulous. I can't do what they do. I'm in awe of them.
Right.
I can barely do what I do. They're wonderful. And it's very thrilling to go to work. I'm doing another series for Columbia TriStar. It's called Channel Upty 3, and it's total madness. Absolutely.
Now, will that be on the fall schedule?
Yes, it will be on for Warner Brothers. That will be Channel 13 in Los Angeles. I don't know about St. Louis.
Now,
hopefully you will see it because it's great fun.
Even though
I beg your pardon?
No, I was going to say, even though you have taken this stand on primarily the voice work, you were, though, indeed, at least offered some kind of a role in the Lost in Space film, right?
Well, yes, I was 3 times, and I declined, thank you very much. But they did offer was an innocuous 6-line bit, which they laughingly call a cameo, but I'm too smart to be taken in by that nonsense. And I said, thank you very much. No. So he came back with more money, and I said, no, not interested. And then Stephen Hopkins, who's a very nice man and the director of the film, called me from London, the Shepperton Studios, where actually I had shot my very first series, The Third Man, and pleaded. I thought that was very nice. I rather like that. And said, what can I do or say to convince you to be in my film? And I said, there's nothing you can do, because I'm very proprietary about Smith. I created him. I own him. And since you've hired Gary Oldman to play him, thank you very much, and I wish you both well. Goodbye. That was the end of that. I have no interest in doing anything other than Smith in any project of Lost in Space, because I feel very close to that part. I loved him, and I love him still, Smith.
I'm kind of
created him. He was fun. He amused me, and I took delight in him, and I gave him, I think, 1,000 facets, and I enjoyed creating that. And I must tell you that really in this long career, I think he's the highlight. I had the most fun.
Oh, there's no doubt. No doubt. Now,
Very
I was reminded of the infamous debate a few years ago between the vice presidential candidates. Remember when Dan Quayle was talking about John Kennedy, and then Lloyd Benson kind of let him have it? And I'm going to say right here, Gary Oldman is a fine actor.
Yes, I think he's a good actor.
But he's no Jonathan Harris.
Well, it's a very tricky part, you see. I've heard, I must tell you, I've not seen any of the movie clips that exist of it. They are around, and I've heard that it's dark and very serious. I'm appalled by that.
I would be too.
That's not Lost in Space at all.
No, it's not.
And they are spending $80 million, so you know they're going to blow up half the world. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired of the explosion.
Yes.
I think.
I agree.
And I will go and see it, of course, because I feel, very warm towards Lost in Space. It was very, very important
Sure.
in my career. I don't know how long I'll sit in the movie theater, but I will go.
I understand.
And I hope, Gary Oldman is a good actor. I've admired his work. But as I say, it's a tricky part. There's a fine line. And probably it's going to be terribly serious, and he will be terribly serious. And bore the pants off me, thank you very much. Another villain? Come on.
Now,
there are villains and there are villains. I like the villains who make you laugh.
That's true. You mentioned The Third Man before, and that series, Michael Rennie was the star, but he was in a very famous 2-part episode on Lost in Space.
Yes, yes. He was a dear friend, and it broke my heart when he died. He was 65, only, and he died of emphysema. And do you know what's interesting? We both stopped smoking the same time, the same day, the same minute. I was 4 packs a day since age 12, and Michael was the same, and we puffed away like crazy fiends on the set at 20th Century Fox. And I sort of put it to him casually, I thought, what do you think? Can we stop smoking? He said, what? I said, do you suppose we ought to stop smoking? And he said, sure, why not? We were kidding. And I said, let's do it now. And we did. Too late for Michael. It was too sad. And thank God, not too late for me. But I have not smoked since, and that was like 38 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have no interest in cigarettes. So.
Now, did you do the cold turkey routine?
Oh, yes.
Just up and quit, right?
I don't know any other way, I have to tell you. I do it or I don't do it.
Yeah.
And, if memory serves, it was 3 weeks of horror. It really was.
Well, I'll bet.
Yeah, but then it was fine. Then my pride took over, and I was stopping strange people on the street to say, guess what? I don't smoke anymore. Get the net.
But that's okay. There would be reason to be.
I'm glad I did it, of course. And Michael died. He went back to London to be with his sister, and then he died, and it just broke my heart.
Yeah.
We were good friends. And it was wonderful to have him on Lost in Space for 2 episodes. We just had a wonderful time. And we enjoyed it.
He always struck me as a consummate pro.
Oh, yes. And he was an elegant fella. And it took a little breaking down. The English sort of back up, and we Americans go forward. But after about a week of breaking him down, oh, there was this lovely, wicked, delicious man with a marvelous sense of humor. And we laughed and laughed all through 90 episodes of The Birdman.
Now, you mentioned...
We had a wonderful time, and that's a lovely memory. And, you know, not always is it that kind of fun, because, you know, there are certain tensions
Oh, yes.
that are inevitable, of course. And the work is very hard, and very often quite boring, but very hard always. You know, in the makeup chair at 7 o'clock in the morning, and on the set at 8 o'clock, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and hopefully knowing all the words. And in my case, you bet knowing all the words. Because of my training, I was always very well prepared. And that's part of my nature from my discipline and training from the theater, which is my first love, you know.
Now,
it really is.
You called Mr. Rennie an elegant Englishman, and no one would dispute that, but you worked with at least one more elegant Englishman. I'm thinking of James Mason in Botany Bay.
Well, he was a strange man. Oh, yes. Very hard to get close to. That was my first movie, Botany Bay, that I did at Paramount in 1953. And Alan Ladd was the star. Very nice man. Very short.
Very short, yeah.
I was dug into a trench because I was playing his buddy. And he was built up on apple boxes, and I gazed up adoringly at him for 16 weeks. Oh, yes, was nice. And James was the captain of the ship, if I remember correctly. We were all convicts who discovered Australia. And I tried to get closer to him, but, you know, he backed up. So I just let it go. You know, what are you going to do?
Right.
But I admire him tremendously as an actor. Really, very fine actor.
Now, prior to Lost in Space, a lot of our listeners would also remember the Bill Dana show.
Oh, what fun. What fun. That was what fun. May I say. We did that at Desilu Cahuenga. That was for NBC. Just before Lost in Space, as a matter of fact. And that was lovely. That was 3-camera live, which is kind of tricky. You familiar with that?
Well, isn't that the device that basically Desi Arnaz employed for I Love Lucy?
Well, it's the same studio, of course.
Yeah.
But the same way that they did it, with an audience of 350 people in the stands.
Wow.
And 3 cameras jockeying around. But it worried me a little to begin with, because it was neither film, because there was an audience, nor was it the theater, because we could stop and go, you see. But I got used to that, and it was great fun. I loved my part. I was the terrible manager of the hotel, I think. Yes, Mr. Phillips. And it was fun. It's always fun, or I just won't do it, you know. I have to have a good time and a good giggle every afternoon. And on all the series that I've done, I must tell you, one of the joys of my life was to buy cases and cases of Tootsie Roll lollipops. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jonathan distributed Tootsie Roll lollipops to the crew. And it was marvelous. It broke the tension. And I had such a good time to watch the 63-year-old camera operator sucking on a lollipop. And it was lovely. And I enjoyed that.
Well,
it made for a giggle, you know, and it did break the afternoon.
Well, not only that, but it shows the crew that you're one of the guys.
Oh, I adore the crew, and they adored me. Thank you. I'm so glad of that. I respected them so, because they're all great artists, you know. Starting with the makeup man, who's a genius. And the crew, my God, these boys are fabulous. Just wonderful. The way they do their job. And I was always part of them, and they knew that, and we were friends. And that always made me feel very, very good. They came to my house and made little parties, and this, always for the crew. Because they were marvelous, and I respected the art of them. I respect art in any form. It's very important.
Now, did you do plays in school?
No, I never did plays in school. My training came because I was terribly poor, and I had no money to go to a drama school, although I always wanted to be an actor. And so I went out into the hinterlands. We had stock companies then, you see, all over the country. And I did over 100 plays in stock companies before I put a foot on the Broadway stage. And I thought I was ready. I thought I'd learned enough to hit the main stem, by God. And I made plans and plotted. I knew that I was going to do that, and I was going to talk in the very first play. No spear carrying for this one.
Oh, no.
And I did my first play. It was called Heart of a City. at the Henry Miller Theater, and I had 10 lines.
Wow.
And the excitement, I can remember that horrible standing in the wings waiting to go on. First night of a Broadway play, my God, I could still feel it was heaven. And then the second play had more than 10 lines. Oh boy, we just made it like that, one step at a time. And that's the way it was. And suddenly I said, well, time for me to get billing.
Yes.
And I got it.
That's good.
Yep. And I had the luck, my dear Lord, may I say, I'm the luckiest actor in the world. I'm so grateful. I was in the best plays ever written, and I had wonderful parts, and I acted with the greats and the near greats of that time, and the great drunks of all time.
Ooh.
Who shall be nameless.
Of course, thank you.
But when pushed and free drinks, then I'll tell everything.
Listen, Jonathan,
How lucky.
speaking of standing in the wings waiting to go on, we have a gentleman who has to do a traffic report. We have a big hoo-ha going on in downtown
yes.
St. Louis. So we're going to break for a traffic report and then take a little break and play a couple of those commercials. You know, they pay the bills.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come back and ask you about the Liars Club, okay?
Oh, yes, yes.
So we'll get into all of that right after this. Our guest is Jonathan Harris. You guys are listening to KTRS, and let's go to Buzz Carlson with traffic. And welcome back, everyone. This is Dave Strauss. Our guest this hour is Jonathan Harris. You remember him as Professor Smith on Lost in Space. He was also on the Bill Dana Show. He's Mr. Phillips, and he was in Space Academy and The Third Man, and golly gee, over 600 different works over the years. Right, Jonathan?
Right.
Yeah.
612.
612 at last count. Now, before we broke, I was going to ask you about Rod Serling. That there used to be a show called The Liars Club, and I'm sure a lot of people won't recall it, but I thought it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
And would you believe that Rod Serling was the host? And I knew Rod very well because I had done Twilight Zone. But he was a great, great talent, you know. But nobody knew about his sense of humor except I did. He had a marvelous sense of humor. And the show was kind of crazy. We were 4, quote, celebs, and we displayed stuff, you know, material and stuff. And 3 of us lied, and 1 of us told the truth, and then the audience had to guess which one was the truth teller and who was the liar. And it was marvelous. I did that for 2 seasons, I guess. It originated in San Francisco, and they used to fly me up every week. And then happily they moved down to Los Angeles. And that's when Rob became the host. And it was lovely. He died at age 50. God, what a loss to all of us.
And that wasn't that not following open heart surgery or something?
Well, he had a heart attack,
Yeah.
actually. He was a wonderful writer. My God, what talent.
Now, of course, you mentioned Twilight Zone. You were on there a couple of times, but you were in one of my favorites, and that was an episode called The Silence.
Oh, yes.
And you talk about one of these things, the twist, like Alfred Hitchcock was famous for.
Yes.
Well, Rod Serling was famous for these
Yes.
too.
This guy made a bet that he could remain silent for a whole year.
Yeah, yeah.
And he won the bet because he cut out his tongue.
Ugh.
Franchot Tone was
Franchot
his
Tone?
fact. Yeah, it just came to me, yeah.
And then the twist was that this other guy with whom he made the bet was supposed to come up with all this money.
Yeah.
And on the day that the 1 year had expired, he said, gosh, I'm sorry, I had to declare bankruptcy.
Yes.
There's no way I can pay you. And then the other guy hands him the note and says, I knew I would never win the bet because I'm too talkative, so I had my tongue cut out.
Yeah.
Oh, my, ooh.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Well, that was Rob's imagination. It
Yeah.
was crazy. It was wonderful.
And
the other one I did was also great fun. I think it was called Room for One More.
Uh-huh.
Or something like that. That I did with Barbara Nichols. I warn you, Dave, I have total recall. I remember all of it.
I'm glad
but
you
it
do.
was all joyous, and I
I'm
had
glad
a
you do.
marvelous time.
You were also in the pilot movie for Macmillan and Wife.
Yeah, with Rock Hudson, who was
Yeah.
a good friend. Lovely man. What a tragic end. But what a dear, sweet, gentle soul he was. Did you know that? He was a lovely, gentle person.
Now, I've never heard anything bad about Rock
Oh,
Hudson.
he was such a good person. And it was heartbreaking the way he died.
Mm-hmm.
But, yes, I did Macmillan and Wife with Rock, and we had a lovely time. We always enjoyed being with each other. And Susan St. James was in that, too.
That's right.
It never went, or did it? I don't remember that one. I did the pilot, though.
I think it was about a year before the series debuted.
Yeah.
Something like that. There was kind of a lag in between the two.
Something
Hey,
like that.
Jonathan, if you don't mind, we have a listener standing by who'd like to ask you a question. Is that
Oh,
okay?
sure.
All right, we're going to bring him up. This is Larry. Larry's calling us from Mount Sterling, Illinois. Hi, Larry. You're on with Jonathan Harris.
It's great to talk to you, Jonathan. I loved Lost in
Hello,
Space.
Larry.
I loved Lost in Space back in the 60s. Never missed an episode.
That's good.
At the time, it was my favorite show on the air at that particular time. I just wondered, did you happen to notice the TV Guide's 100 Greatest Episodes of All Time article?
I guess you know the one they picked.
Well, I would have never picked the Great Days for Real Value.
Well, if it's the worst show we've ever done.
It was the worst.
I guess TV Guide thought it was a goodie.
It should be one of the 100 worst episodes of all time, maybe, but not.
Well, do you know how that came about? That show was written by our very best writer, Peter Packer. And he did marvelous creative, imaginative work. And he came to my dressing room. And he almost didn't hand me the script. And I said, "What's wrong, Peter?" He said, "This is such trash." I said, "Then why did you write it?" He said, "Because I didn't have another damned idea in my head." And that's the way that was.
Could I know my two favorite episodes that should have been listed in the top 100?
What?
Mine would have been the very first episode of Reluctant Stowaway, where you got caught on board the spaceship, which was funny. And also the one called Visit to a Hostile Planet from the third season. We went back to 1947.
Oh, yes.
Those are the two best
I remember that. You know, it's very difficult, Larry, to remember them because we shot back to back. You know, we would finish one episode at 2 o'clock and start the next one at 3. And it was just a question of, my God, what do I say in this one? Kind of thing. So it was very, very difficult to remember them.
Thank you very much, Larry.
A couple of them sort of remain in my head.
Yeah. Now, would it be fair to say, Jonathan, that Irwin Allen was cheap?
Fair. It is the truth.
How did I know?
Oh, he was a piece of work, that one. May I tell you. But I have to tell you, I had great respect for his expertise in the area in which he worked, which was disasters and floods and earthquakes and ships turning over upside down and all of that sort of thing. And
Poseidon Adventure, yeah.
But on a day-to-day basis, oh, God, he was tough. He was a tough cookie. But everyone knows those battles, most of them, I think.
Now, explain for people, if you will, why you had the special billing that you had on the show.
Oh, that's an interesting story if we've got the time.
Go right ahead.
It's a very interesting story. I was called in by then agent, whose name escapes me at the moment, called up and said, Irwin Allen is doing a series called Lost in Space at 20th Fox, and he wants to see film on you. And I said, oh, you know, in Hollywood, they don't want to give you a job unless they're sure somebody else is giving you a job. It's called security. They want to make sure that you can walk and talk and chew gum all at the same time. Makes you an actor, right? Oh, God, Hollywood. Anyway, I said to the agent, what's the part? Oh, I don't know, said Mr. 10%. Oh, fine. I said, well, you tell Mr. Allen that I will be very happy to show him the real me, but I hesitate to show him the wrong film. And he said, well, you're not going to like that. And I said, tough. Well, you know exactly, Dave, that's not what I said.
I understand.
I said something a little stronger than that.
It is a radio show for families.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
And 20 minutes later, he called back, and he said, Irwin Allen wants to know who you think you are, and he'll see you at 4 o'clock. Well, so I went to the office, and there he was, surrounded by his yes men, and it was an extraordinary meeting. The weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. He was very strange, I thought. And he went on to say that I was to do this, and somebody give him a script, and blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I suppose you want billing. I said, well, Mr. Allen, it's customary for an actor of my theatrical stature to get proper billing on the screen. Oh, he says, let me tell you, we've already done the pilot, and your character wasn't in it. And I've signed everybody else. They're all signed, sealed, and delivered, and you'll have to be last. And I said, well, just a moment. I don't believe I would be comfortable in last position. And he said, well, you go home if you want to do this series, and I want you to do this series. You go home and think about it. And you come up with an answer, and you call me up. It was very strange. I was terrified. I backed out of that office, shaking like a leaf. Had the script in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Went home and read it, and I have a little instinct about things like that. And I said, that's a goodie. Now, you know, I'm not the kind of actor who would tamper with anybody else's billing, because that's not ethical and it's not moral. You just don't do it. It's not professional. But last, come on, Dave. That's not where I end up as a rule.
Mm-hmm.
What to do? Then it came to me, if I had to be last, it would have to be some sort of special laugh.
Sure.
So I called my friend at NBC who was head of casting, and I said, did you ever give a regular member of a series special guest star billing? He said, certainly not. I've never given billing like that. It's out of the question, and I never will. I said, that's all I have to know. So I called Irwin, and I said, I've solved the billing problem. And he said, oh, what? And I told him, well, the howling, the screaming, you wouldn't have believed it went on for 20 minutes. After about 20 minutes of shrieking, he said, well, okay. And that's how I got the first time on television. Special guest star every week, Jonathan Harris.
That's great.
Since that time, of course, billing has become total madness, as you know.
Oh, yes.
Special appearance of, and people in the box with a guest appearance of, and on, and I started the whole thing. And I'm proud.
I'm glad to have learned that.
See?
Yeah.
I was the first one who started all that. Well, it suited me, and I thought I had to do that, and I guess he wanted me because he let me get away with it. Because it had never, ever been done, Dave.
Well,
really.
good. I'm very pleased to have heard that, and good for you. I'm glad it worked out.
I was proud of myself.
I'm glad. Listen, we have another caller standing by.
Sure.
This is Lisa. She's calling us from University City. Lisa, you're on with Jonathan Harris.
Hi, Mr. Harris. It is a real honor talking with you, and I enjoy watching the reruns on the Sci-Fi
Well, that's
Channel.
lovely. I'm glad to hear it.
And I have a couple questions to ask you about Bliss. First is, how did Red Skelton with his Van Bernard company get involved with Lost in Space? Number two, what did you think of the comic books that came out several years ago that Billy Mooney did, the updated versions of Lost in Space? And 2 years ago, Lost in Space celebrated its 30th anniversary, and I believe there was a big convention in Chicago. And
No, in Boston.
Oh, I'm sorry, in Boston. I just wanted to know what were your thoughts on that.
Well, let me see now. Red Skelton and Von
Ago, Lost in Space celebrated its 30th anniversary.
Let me see now. Red Skelton and Von Bernardi. There were 3 or 4 others, my dear. I don't really remember them. There was, I think, 5 different partners. It was all very confusing. I think Groucho Marx was involved somehow. And Red Skelton, the Von Bernardi, and Viacom, I think. All kinds of people that Irwin had involved in it. The checks came from 20th Century Fox because it was a 20th Century Fox project, you see. But Irwin was involved with all of these other people, and I don't know what his deal with them was, and that was none of my business, so I never bothered to find out. Now, the thing in Boston was enormous, very gratifying. I think there were 32,000 people
Wow.
who came to see us. It was really very, very staggering and very rewarding. And they cheered and carried on, and I must tell you, I loved it. It was lovely. And the press came, and we had a wonderful reception. And I enjoyed that. You know, there were so many people, and they loved us. And I think that's so nice, you know, so it gives you a warm feeling. You know, I must tell you that working in front of a little black box, a camera, for as many years as I have, the camera is an inanimate object. It doesn't react in any way. It doesn't laugh or cry or applaud. And I'm stage trained, and I was used to instant reaction. I always wondered, does anybody watch? Really, you begin to say, does anybody watch this? And then when you go to affairs of that kind and get the thousands of lovely letters that I still receive, you realize that people do watch, and that's very nice.
And what was your take on the comic books that Billy did?
Well, the comic books, Innovation did them, I believe, and then they went out of business. I thought they were rather good.
Mm-hmm.
Then Billy did a collection of them, did he not? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they took on a different hue, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
They got a little more serious.
A little darker. A little darker.
They got darker, as the movie is going to be, obviously. And I really didn't approve of that. I didn't think that was Lost in Space.
Okay, thanks to...
Lost in Space had a very particular color.
Oh, yes.
And that's the way I felt about that. Billy, of course, is a good friend, my buddy.
Right. Okay, thanks to Lisa for her question.
Thank you for calling.
Right. You know, I wanted to say also, I'm so glad to hear that the checks were from 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to endorse a check made out from Clem Cadiddlehopper.
Oh.
You
I
know?
don't think so. That wouldn't be a good idea.
That's right. Jonathan, we need to take one more break right here. When we come back, I would like to investigate a little bit further your friendship with Billy and how you still keep in touch with him to this day, and we'll talk about all of that right after these words.
Warning, warning.
Well, I don't know how it happened, but somehow that wily robot got in here, and that's the last we're going to hear of him. We're talking with Jonathan Harris. He has graciously agreed to be our guest this evening, and it's a fantastic time that we're having. Before we broke for that last one there, Jonathan, we were talking about Billy Mummy, and...
By the way, it's Moomy.
Moomy, my fault. I asked somebody about that, and I got two different reactions, but I'm glad you straightened me out on it. A talented young man, and started off in the business as a wee little child, right?
Yeah, he's a marvelous actor. Did you ever see his Twilight Zone when he was 6?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Beautiful performance.
Yeah.
It was a treat for me, let me tell you, Dave. Because when you have to act with a kid, it's very hard, you know. But this kid, boy, what an actor. And quick. I used to steal him away from the teacher for 5 minutes here. It was a tough scene for us to do. And bing, 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 in 5 minutes. And out we'd go and do it in one take. Oh, he was very marvelous to work with.
Mm-hmm.
He's in Babylon 5, you know.
Yes, he is.
And real dreadful makeup. It takes 2 hours to put it on. God,
Mm.
I couldn't do that, I'm afraid. I'm sort of claustrophobic. And I couldn't be encased. I'm sure he doesn't like it too well, but of course it's a job, you know.
Yes.
And they've been picked up for a 5th year, which is lovely to hear.
Isn't that something?
That's good. And he's married, you know, and has 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
A boy and a girl. Seth is his son and has already done 2 movies.
You're kidding.
No. He's done 2 movies, and the little girl is too young. But I'm sure she'll probably follow in Daddy's footsteps.
Oh, that's great.
Well.
Glad to hear
Darling
that.
little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy is just my buddy. He's my buddy.
That's neat.
He's a lovely actor.
Sad to say, but one of the cast members of Lost in Space passed away. That was Guy Williams.
Yes, that was so
And,
sad.
I didn't know this until recently, but you had worked with him on Zorro.
Yeah. Oh, way back. Yeah. And there we were again. I don't know why he went to Buenos Aires, which is where he died. He'd been living there for 20 years, I was told. And I don't really know the reason for that, except that I heard that Zorro was a great smash hit in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why he went. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But he was living there for 20 years. And I suppose made friends there and made a life for himself. His family remained in Los Angeles. And that was very sad.
Well, I know
he was only 65.
when his death was announced, it was shocking to learn where he was discovered.
Yes.
Yeah.
In his apartment. He'd been dead for about a week.
Yeah.
And nobody knew. My dear man, how awful. That was just a shock for all of us, you may be sure.
Well, let's get back to some positive things. I understand that during the course of the show, throughout the 83 episodes, that most often, it was Jonathan Harris who came up with a lot of those nice lines that we all like to mimic.
I wrote them all.
Yeah.
To be quite succinct, I wrote them all.
So,
I told you that I had carte blanche,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope I didn't overreach, but everything you heard, I wrote, or rewrote, because I understood Smith. I created Smith, and I thought like Smith from 7 o'clock in the morning. And all the stuff with the robot, that was all mine. And may I tell you, and I will tell only you and everyone who's listening,
yes.
I have read the script of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Smith in the movie says lots of my things.
No.
Oh, yes. Never fear, Smith is here. Oh, the pain, the pain.
They don't use bubble-headed booby.
No, it doesn't use that, but a lot of other stuff, which is mine. Of course, I never copyrighted it.
No.
Nobody to sue. However, all of that came from me, and generally impromptu. Oh, the pain. I remember the day I first dreamt that up. I had a thing running with my delicate back, you see. I would love to do the work and to help you. My back is in extremely delicate condition today. And that was what I was playing that morning. And in the middle of that whole conversation, I said, I'm sure you understand. Oh, the pain. It just slipped out. Of course, they kept it in. And it became world famous. Wherever I go, somebody says, oh, the pain. I love it. It's crazy.
I could see some of these on some T-shirts. There is a market out there.
Oh, yes. Well, there's a market out there for Lost in Space. I don't know what's going to happen with the movie. I hope it's a success, because that would please me, because I'm part of that, even though I'm not in it.
Sure.
I don't know. Who knows about movies anymore?
Staying in a sci-fi vein just a little bit, you did some work on Battlestar Galactica, too.
Oh, yes. I played the voice of Lucifer. That was fun to do. Go to the recording studio and record 3 shows. Say thanks very much, go home, and the check comes.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Didn't have to learn anything. Just pick it up and read it. That was fun. It was a forerunner to my voice work, I guess. Because I do enjoy that, because, I've been learning lines, Dave, for almost all of my life. I'm really tired of it. Learning lines. I was very good at it. I was considered one of the quick studies, which I was. But I'm really tired of learning lines. I've been at it so long. So the voice work is heaven. I pick up the script and I read it. Of course, I insist that they send the script to me at least a day in advance, because I like to work on it, you see.
Sure.
And then I come and I'm prepared and I enjoy it tremendously, but I read it. I don't learn it. I mean, I don't memorize it. And that suits me fine. It really does. By the way, there's a big tribute to Lost in Space on the Sci-Fi Channel on July 14th and 15th, and I'm headlining that.
Really? I'll look forward to that.
Oh, a big
That's a Monday and a Tuesday.
That's a Monday and a Tuesday. Is it?
Yes.
I don't have the calendar here. I think so.
Yeah.
It's a Monday and a Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be, they're going to run a marathon of Lost in Space, the television series, of course, and many interviews with the press, and everybody's going to be there.
Now, is there a release date
Now,
yet?
another very interesting thing that might amuse you. I work constantly for New Line Cinema television branch. Interesting?
Yes, doing what?
I host for them. All of their events are hosted by Jonathan.
Well, that's neat.
It's too crazy. I love it. I was just in New York for their licensing show, and I signed 2,000 photos.
Wow.
Which pleased them no end.
I'll bet.
And CNN showed up, and the place was alive with celebrities and stars. And
Sure.
guess who got the CNN? Ron Howard and me.
That's neat.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course that tickled them no end, because it was very good publicity, you see. And I did the NATPE convention for them, and the merchandising thing, and the marketing. I do all of that stuff for them. They're very, very nice people, charming, and I love my boss, quote, who's president of that branch, and lovely man. And they treat me extremely well. They send a car, and money's gorgeous, which I like.
That's good. Listen, Jonathan, we're up.
Hotels and
We're up against the news. We must run, but this has been wonderful, and
thank you, Dave. I enjoyed very much chatting with you.
I appreciate
Is my friend Timmy there?
He certainly is.
You give him my very best regards.
I will
He's
do
my
that.
good friend.
Is there a release date on It's a Bug's Life yet?
I beg your pardon?
Is there a release date for It's a Bug's Life?
1998, late. Can you imagine?
We
I've
got
been
it.
recording for 7 months already.
Ooh,
They are painstaking.
I hear you.
Oh, boy.
Listen, stay on hold for just a second. My producer, Craig, would like to talk to you. And again, thanks very much, Jonathan
You're
Harris.
very welcome. It was my pleasure, Dave.
Thank you again. Jonathan Harris, and don't forget him. He is from Lost in Space and all those other many, many fine programs.